Hello you lovely creative beings, welcome to this tutorial. So I thought it was really interesting to make some backgrounds today and show you how easy it can be. Now these can be used in a number of ways when they're dry. You can cut them out and you can make them as standalone paintings and draw on each one. You could use them in collages, for mixed media, card making, so many options. You need a big piece of paper. I'm using an A2 pad and this is cartridge paper, so it will accept paint on it as well as pencil and pen. This is a good quality one from Jackson's Art. And I'm using washi tape. Washi tape is Japanese tape and it's brilliant because it pulls off really easily and you can lift it and stick it back down again without it ruining your paper. If you use masking tape can pull the surface off your paper. So as you can see, I've made a mistake here, so I just lifted it off and it just sticks back down again. Also, washi tape is shiny on the top, which is good because when you're painting over it, it'll just come off. Now if you haven't got any washi tape, do invest in some that is a little bit more expensive. So you can get washi tape from places like the pound shop, but they're not very good at all. They don't stick and they'll just peel off and it'll make your creative practice really annoying. So do spend a couple of pound on a roll if you can. If you do use masking tape, I suggest that you stick the masking tape strips onto a piece of fabric first to get rid of some of the sticky. And with masking tape, the bonus is that when you paint over it, you can keep that masking tape for then working in your journal, or if you needed it for a mixed media piece where you can't really do that with washi tape. But if you do peel it off carefully, you can use washi tape again. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to paint all different colours in the background of each square. Now you can do this any way that you want. You can use any kind of paint or any kind of colours. I'm using watercolour on this one and it's a mixture between the Winsor & Newton professional watercolours and Winsor & Newton just ordinary watercolours. And it's just because when the ordinary ones run out, I just buy the professional to replace the colour because the pigment is a lot darker and I prefer to use them. So I'm just randomly doing all different colours. Now if you wanted to, you could colour coordinate this. So if you fancied doing it all black and whites and greys, you could do that, or if you could do it all reds or whatever you wanted. But I'm just doing it all different colours today, and it doesn't really make a difference about how you're doing the brush strokes, but use a thick brush because otherwise it'll take you forever if you're using a thin brush. And I ended up painting in different directions just to give some grain to the watercolour. So this is what you're going to do. You're just going to paint all the background, and now I'm going to use some salt. Now I'll show you this. When you paint with watercolour and then you put salt on it, when it dries, it makes it almost like a galaxy, like there's little flecks. The salt repels the watercolour paint, and then as it dries, it like sucks it in because salt's porous. It sucks in the water. You can't see it right now, but towards the end I'll show you the ones that I've put salt on and you'll be able to see. It's really good. So now all the background colours are painted, I'm going to go in on top with some different patterns. Now these can be any patterns that you want: spirals, squares, lines, triangles, checkered, polka dot. It doesn't really matter. Just feel into what you fancy doing and just go for it. The only top tip that I've got for you is to do a contrasting kind of colour. So if you are painting over yellow like me, I'm going in with a little bit of orangey red, just so things stick out a little bit more. And then you can see I've decided that I'm going in with some yellow, and we're going to build each layer up, so it's not just going to be a square with stripes in it. You'll see that on top of the stripes we're going to add things like gold, pen, dots, all sorts of things, just to make the backgrounds a lot more interesting. At this point, you're just going to tap into what it was like when you was a child and you was creating. Just use your imagination, use your intuition to decide what you want to add and where. Don't overthink it. It's not got to be perfect. It's not meant to be a finished product. Just play. Just think about, what colour would I like to add? Where would I like to paint next? You can see as well that I'm using different techniques, so not just a paintbrush. I've got an artist sponge now with some gouache. I'm off camera here. I thought I was on camera, but I'm actually putting paint on the bubble wrap. You can just see it just a little bit there. I'm going to put some paint on the bubble wrap just to get a little bit of texture onto the background pieces. And this doesn't work as well as if you'd put paint on a roller tray. That works much better when you're using bubble wrap, but it doesn't matter. It's just a play, it's just a practice, it's just to get some kind of background papers. And you use anything that you want. You could use pieces of plant out the garden to paint with. You could use some fabric to make some marks. I'm just using the art sponge now to get off the excess paint, and I'm going to add another colour to this. And I'm not even going to bother washing it in between colours. I'm just going to keep adding the colours and then layering and layering. That's just what making backgrounds is about, just layering up so you've got some kind of texture, some kind of interest in there, so it's not just a flat piece of paint. Posca pens are really good for drawing over paint, and they are permanent markers, so that's really good to know. You can actually use Posca pens on things like ceramics and fabric and stuff like that. They're really, really brilliant. They are a little bit more expensive than other markers, but they are worth it. Now, when you first get them, the ends are see-through, like the tip, the nib will be see-through. You need to shake the pen. Every time you use it, you need to shake it to, there's like a ball inside, to get that ink flowing. And then when you've done that, you need to press the nib down a few times on a piece of paper until the colour comes through. When I first ever got my first Watercolour pen, I didn't know this, and I took it back to the shop and I said, it's faulty, it doesn't work. And the lady in the shop showed me how to do it. So yeah, give it a shake and press down the nib until the ink comes out, and then you can start using it. So I'm adding a different kind of texture now with some Dilutions ink. Ink spray is brilliant. Now don't shake the ink spray. We don't do that because that blocks up the nib. But ink spray is really good, and you can get it in all different colours. And here is some Brusho. Brusho is powdered watercolour, and it's got all sorts of pigments in it. You can use it in many different ways. When you wet your paper, you can sprinkle it on very carefully because loads ends up coming out sometimes, and it just makes these incredible, beautiful kind of firework effect paint marks. And so that's a really nice thing. So of course, if you don't have Brusho and you don't have Dilutions ink spray, that's totally fine. You do anything. You can use anything. Crayons. Whoops, that's upside down. It just say Brusho on it though. Could use and that's upside down as well. That's Dilution spray. You could use crayons. You could even get berries out the garden and squash berries into it. You could use coffee granules. These are really nice. These are metallic pens, double-ended. One end is fine and the other end's a brush. So I'm just going to go in and just make some more patterns, and you can see how it's building up now, how the layers are building up, and it doesn't matter if there's a dark bit of paint somewhere or a lighter bit of paint, it just all adds to the texture. can't think of any patterns to make, we do have a section on patterns in our Patreon. If you go into the Patreon and just search patterns, it should come up in the search bar, and you'll be able to see there was all sorts of different patterns in that. But any kind of patterns that you want to make is totally fine. And sometimes you'll make something like, now I'm colouring these in and I'm thinking, oh, I've made a bit of a mistake here, but I'd already started, I'd already committed to it. So I just carry on with it. But that's not my favourite thing ever. And that's totally okay. Sometimes you'll make things and you'll be like, I don't actually like that bit, and that's fine, because later on when they're cut up and you're going to use them in collage or mixed media or whatever you're using them for, you can just discard that one if you wanted to. Or, and this is interesting, sometimes you might come back to it at a later date and actually like it. I always have old tea towels when I'm painting. They're really good for drying up excess paint, and they're all different patterns. So this one's like a fabric waffle pattern, I think it's called, this tea towel, and then I've got another one that's more like a bath towel type. And they're actually really good for adding texture as well on top of the paint. So I'm dabbing off the excess paint here so it dries faster, but also as you're doing that, it is creating extra patterns. And I think one day when I'm rich and famous, I might sell my tea towels for £1 million because they'll all have paint all over them. Now here's the salt, look at that. Look how the salt makes a gorgeous impression in the paint, and that's why we use it. Isn't it beautiful? So don't use table salt because that doesn't give you much of a pattern. Rock salt and sea salt is what you want. Now for the satisfying part, we're going to take off the washi tape. This is another reason why I dabbed the towel over the paint to make it drier, because if you take the tape off while the paint's all very wet, it will just bleed into the areas. So the washi tape's really good because it comes off really easily. If you're going to peel off masking tape, you need to peel that off at an angle, so then it doesn't drag the paint off your paper or your canvas. But washi tape, you can just pull it off. I am pulling this off at a slight angle. That's just the angle of my hand. And you can see how the underneath is appearing. And it actually looks quite magical when you take the tape off. Now I've taken the tape off, I think some of these squares are missing something. So I'm just going to go back into some of these very carefully with some gold metallic paint. This is a Leonardo da Vinci palette of watercolour metallic paint. And you want to be careful because you don't really want to go on the white, in case you wanted to keep it as it is and you didn't want to cut it out. And you could just use these backgrounds as they are as a standalone piece of art and put it in a frame, or like we said in the beginning, you can cut it up. Now you can see there I've actually made a mistake and gone right over the edge of the white, and I'm like, no. So this is a thing that was a lesson for me today as well, so let it be a lesson for you. Maybe do all these bits when the tape's still stuck on, but sometimes you can't quite see, if that makes sense. You can't quite see what you want to do because the tape's colourful. And then when you've got the white background, you can see, oh, hang on a minute, this needs this or this needs that. Again, it's just playing, it's just experimenting, and it's just trusting your intuition. So I hope you have loads of fun making backgrounds, and I hope they inspire you just to play and get some creativeness going in your life in an easy and relaxed way that's going to be fun, and you'll feel like, oh, I can achieve anything if I can make these backgrounds, I can achieve anything. So happy creating!